Asteroid of fear.
I'm going to start off with a little reflection here. March 28th. Move on. Take that step forward. You're ready to embrace something new, and you cannot do it while dwelling in the past. You'll have to let go of many things to move forward, because the future needs your hands to be empty if it is to fill them with new opportunities. Moving on is a process of making space for the new while honoring the lessons of what came before it. What do you need to let go of to make this space for yourself? All right, you on to the interview. All right, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And this morning we have Wes Tankersley with Shaping Success. So, welcome in, Wes. And first of all, I want to thank you for joining me this morning, as both fathers and husbands and all that, and trying to get this podcast thing going. You know, we're often up early or up late, trying to make this thing happen. So, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. You know, it's been a while since I've been on one myself. Like, I obviously record almost every day for the most part. Well, every weekday for the most part. But like, I can only imagine what it's like to be on the other end, because that's where it is. It's like you're always thinking about, like, what do I got to do here and what do I got to do there and what, you know, I mean, and it's just crazy. It's easier when you just got to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the cool things is, if people don't know, you have a podcast, Shaping Success, which is kind of where I found you. I met you on TikTok, and um, I was kind of new to TikTok, wanting to use TikTok kind of as that Instagram advertising platform for the podcast. But, the way they've incorporated their live feature, where you're scrolling through a post and you see a live, and I came across you.
Right.
And having started a podcast, I was like, oh, wow, I'm getting to see a podcast in real time. And so that was kind of the first thing that attracted me to the podcast. And then, of course, I start hearing the topics. And what people don't know is your podcast is early in the morning coffee.
Right.
The one I listen to. I usually get up early. There's a lot of times I'm up getting my daughter ready, making lunch, trying to get her ready for school and whatnot, and I can tune in. And, it's kind of cool. What I love about it is, if you miss it, of course, you can hear it. You can watch it on all the platforms on YouTube. Um, but, with the TikTok portion in the morning where it's live, you can get that interaction. And, as you're talking and what you're saying creates thoughts. And of course, at the end, you have a little wrap up period where you're uploading everything that kind of gives the audience a chance to participate and conversate. And, I enjoy that part as well. And I think, what I'm trying to give the listener is, hey, this is, with modern technology, yes, if you're a podcast lover, listener, you can listen to it. But if you're up at that hour and you have TikTok, YouTube, you can tune in and catch it live. And I think that's just one of the beauties of technology in the world we live in. And as a podcaster, but more importantly, a podcast fan, being able to tune in live and have that interaction is it's just golden. So
Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about that before, like before we're talking about it. And like one of the biggest things for me is like there's always, like, we're recording this obviously, and it's not live, but that's okay. Like, if that's the way you do it, like, that's great. There's no right way to do it. But what I found with my life, because just like you, it's so busy, I'm out here in the morning at 4:15 my time, because, or not 4:15, it's 5 o'clock. I get up at 4:15. I'm out here at 5 o'clock my time because my kids are sleeping, right? My wife is sleeping most times, and I can get out here without affecting that. And then if I have to take the time to edit everything and put everything together, that takes more time. And I love the aspect of the live thing and being able to interact with people. So it has the chat room going in both spots, because the program that I use is able to go to Facebook, YouTube, and X. And so, like, anyone who is watching from any of those platforms, can chat there, and then I put TikTok because it hasn't quite got there, and I can kind of see back and forth between them and interact. I mean, I've always liked the idea of being like, I wish I was a radio host or had paid enough to be a radio host, because it's kind of fun to be able to like have people call in or talk to people or address those topics as they come in. Because as you're commenting and I'm going through the things that I'm looking at and that processes that I'm going through in my head and relating them to my life and how I use them, people are commenting too. And like I can, you know, kind of go off of that too. When you say something that reacts, and I can, that's right, you know, like, and I look down, I see that, like you commented on one yesterday, I think, and I read the comment out loud and said, yeah, exactly. And then like this is part of that, and that's how, and I can riff off of that. So it's fun to do it live, I feel like, for me.
Yeah, and you know, and kind of my style too in terms of interviewing is like, you know, I like to have an outline and a direction, but I also like to keep it open to where it can be also a conversation, like your
Right.
podcast in a way. And in that sometimes something the person you're talking to, they just say something that sparks another thought and can take the conversation deeper into another direction that's related. Um, but let's start off. Where'd you grow up?
So, you know, I mean, it's kind of a weird story. I talk to people about this every day because, like, I'm a salesman. You're always trying to find ways to relate yourself to other people. But I was born in California, so down in Salinas, California. And then at the age of 10, my parents moved me to Ontario, Oregon, which is like 30 miles away from where I am. Like it was right on the Idaho-Oregon border. And so I grew up in Ontario, you know, played sports there. I was a football player, baseball player. My freshman year, I mean, I played basketball, and which I wish I would have continued to play basketball, but I didn't. But you know, I played sports there, and then ended up back in California after I graduated high school for a little bit. I got a scholarship to play football, but didn't really like the school that um, I was going to have to go to that gave me the scholarship. I didn't want to go there. It was too far away from home, too far away from anything. So I couldn't like just go escape. Like, hey, I need to go home this weekend. It would be a whole day drive, and I was like 8 hours away.
Hmm.
And then if I wanted to go down to California to go see my family, another 8 hour drive. So like there was no like in between. I didn't like that, and I didn't like football enough to get like a partial scholarship and play, unless I was like if my school was completely paid for, it'd be a different story, but it just wasn't. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where I grew up. I grew up in Ontario, Oregon, small little town, small little farm town, and yeah, I hated it. I hated it when I was growing up. It was funny, but now I live on 3 acres. It's like I went back out. I lived in the city for a while. Like I want to live in the city. I want to do these things in the city because it's so close to everything. And now it's like I hated that, and I wanted to get back out to the country. So it's kind of cool to be able,
Yeah,
excuse me,
it's
to
a
raise the kids here.
convenience. It's a convenience thing. I grew up on 12 acres, like in a town of 400 people when I moved here. Then it went to like 600, 800. Now it's like 5,000. But, you know, my wife and I, we spent 8 years in Austin, Texas, and I worked downtown. And,
Yeah,
you know, you love the convenience, but then after moving back, it's, and having a 10-year-old, you know, it's just, you don't have to worry about passing cars, all kinds of, there's just so much freedom and so much
right.
I appreciate it about it now that I just didn't have the capability of appreciating when I was younger. It's kind of funny how that works out. But
Yeah, you're just thinking like, hey, I want to go. For me, it was like it's 7 miles to town. I have to
right.
get a ride, or I have to, you know, drive there or whatever. It was like it was ridiculous. I want to go to the basketball game. Well, now I got to drive all the way over there. I want to go to the, you know, whatever. I got to go to practice now. I got to wait for my parents to come pick me up or whatever. I
We had one
hated
two
riding the bus.
we had
It
one two-way
sucked.
stop in
Yeah,
town and that was it.
yeah,
So you mentioned you played sports and kind of the importance of that as it relates to what we're talking about. And, you know, let everybody in. Podcast Connection Network, we talk about mental health a lot. Sometimes it has a negative connotation, but, you know, I want to flip it and talk about something positive. And, you know, what I notice about you and the audience is going to learn is your fortitude. And I'm guessing that playing sports had a little bit to do with that. What was it growing up in a small town that attracted you to sports? Was it just were you naturally athletic, or what was it about sports that you gravitated towards?
It's interesting because I have this conversation like with my daughter every day because I'm a lot like her, I feel like, or I was a lot like her. I had a really negative experience with sports when I was her age. I played little league, and it was that typical, the coach is always some kid's dad. He plays the people that he knows.
Right.
I may have not been good enough, but at 10, I didn't quite understand that. Um, and so I really hated baseball after that experience. And when we moved, I ended up giving Little League another shot, right? So I was 11 and tried out for Little League in Ontario and ended up on a team. Like I still remember the coach. He was a great guy. Made me enjoy baseball again. Gave me a reason to like it. And then that's just kind of where it all took off. Like I was kind of an artsy, not artsy, but like I was into like crafts and building things and stuff like
Mhm.
that because I got out of sports. And um, I ended up going and doing this thing. And so when I started playing baseball, I ended up being on the minor league team. And like
Oh
they
wow.
found out quickly that that was a mistake because um, I was athletic, right? And I had this drive that like I've always had the drive that no matter what I do, I'm going to do it 100%. And if I can't do it 100%, I'm not going to do it at all. Um, and I just remember a lot of stuff about that. Like I was a good hitter. Um, I remember this play where I just laid out. I'm like, how did I do that? Like, there's all these things that you just do that you just become second nature because you're just working really hard at it. Um, and so that kind of got me back into sports. And then once I got back into there, it ended up being that this same coach that was my baseball coach was my Optimus football coach. And I mean, I damn near quit football one time because I hated running. And I still despise it. I mean, um, and so their big thing was like you start at practice. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go run this big lap around. And it's like I've gone back to that school yet for now, and it was very small. It might not even have been a lap around the track, but it
It
was
seemed
it
insurmountable.
it did it. And it's like I'm running as fast as I can, and I'm trying to get around this thing, and I'm this big giant. Like I mean, when I was in the fifth grade, I was probably 6 foot. They as a lineman, they tell you that or as a person who's over, they had like a weight limit, right? So like if you're
Hmm.
over 150 pounds, you can't carry the ball. So like you're automatically stuck in lineman mode because that's all you can be. Because they don't want you to hurt someone or they don't want the little kids being able to not stop you. And I was a big kid. So my lineman career started right off the bat because that's all I could be. But running that lap, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I remember it was funny. And I've talked about this on the podcast before because motivation from your parents was a little bit different back in the day.
Hmm.
Um, my parents had paid for it. I told them I was going to do it. Uh, my dad had an experience when he was younger that he quit playing football because his brother committed suicide and he had to take care of all these things that his brother had going on. And his dad told him, nope, you can't play. So he had to quit because he had no choice of all these things he had to do. And then he never went back. And he regretted that so much so that he wasn't going to allow us to quit something that we started. He'd be okay if I got through the season, I was done. But I was like, I remember laying on the ground, crying, telling him, no, I'm not running. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. And then my mom came and got me and she took me home. And my dad gave me an attitude adjustment when I got home and said, you are not quitting. I refuse to let you do it. And we've since had a conversation. I mean, obviously, this is like a long time ago. I mean, I'm 43, but I still remember those things. And I kind of feel like that's the start of where things went for me. It's like, you're not quitting. You don't have a choice. You started it, you finish it. And it ended up being one of the best things for me. It's like telling me that, explaining to me why later on in life, he told me is like, I had no choice. I couldn't do it. And I didn't hate myself, but I regret it so much that I quit that. And it was one of the best things he ever did for me was teach me that you can't quit. Like if you start something, no matter how bad you are at it, no matter what it is, if you don't get kicked off the team, if you don't get, like that's it. You don't quit. And even if you got like injured or something like that, you're still there. That's all there is to it. You need to be there for your team. So, I mean, that's kind of where that all started. But as sports carried on, like I was taught so many things by my coaches, and I remember each and every one of them and what they, and I'm always so thankful when I get to see them. Like you follow them on Facebook and you see them, and I always like to say, hey, you know, I don't know if you know this or not, but you changed the way that I thought about a lot of things. You are part of the reason why I am the way that I am, you know?
Now, you know, it's always interesting. I think with anything that people get kind of proficient at or people pursue, sports especially. I mean, do was there a point like, you know, you started off, you hated running these laps, and then it becomes like a I'm not gonna quit thing and I'm gonna see this through. But there's also a point that I think people forget about. Did you actually enjoy it? Did you enjoy the game? What was it that you enjoyed? Was it the competition? Was it the progress you saw in yourself? Was it somebody else seeing something in you? Or was it just love of the game? Or was it kind of a combination of a little bit of all of it? Because we all have this idea of kids, like you see Joe Montana or something, and you're like, man, I want to be like that guy. I remember having the San Francisco 49ers outfit from J.C. Penney's at 7 years
Right.
old. And so you love it. And then I played Little League ball, and it was like, you go in, and then of course it's hard, you know, and there's different things, and you may not always start or you may start. But you know, I remember loving it because I was kind of the same size as most people as a young person. But once we got out of little league into junior high, like, you know, to put it into perspective, I was 4'11" and 90 pounds as a freshman.
Yeah.
So my football career ended kind of when most people started.
Right.
And but, you know, at that point, I didn't love it enough to continue. I was too small. I was getting injured. It wasn't fun for me, and that's
Right.
why I didn't continue. But, you know, as it relates to, you know, did you actually enjoy it? What was it about it that, besides the talking from your dad, that kind of kept you going, that took you to a scholarship level?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was something. So one thing, obviously, like I can't. There's this thing that I always looked at. Like there are people who are extremely talented and gifted, and they're able to do that. I was not extremely talented or gifted. My gift was that I was big. Like, I mean, by the time I was a freshman in high school, I was pretty close to the size that I am right now. You know, like I'm 6'3", 260 right now. That's about what I played. When I was a freshman, I was probably 6'2". You know, I was almost there. Like a lot of people mature. I'm assuming you're not the same height and weight that you were when you were a freshman, because some people mature really fast. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
and I got lucky. I mean, that's where it was. Like I'm sitting here in fifth grade wearing a 10 and a half size shoe. My dad's pissed because I'm putting his shoes on. Um, and I'm like, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to wear my dad's shoes because I can. Um, but it became a point where like I realized when I was a freshman, you know, I still think like there's a guy that was a class ahead of me that was a freshman, and he started on the varsity. He ended up getting hurt, but he started on the varsity. Like that was unheard of. You had to be extremely good to be able to start on the varsity as a freshman. And he ended up, I don't know what happened to him, but he ended up getting a punctured lung or something his freshman year and didn't get to finish out the season, but he was there. And my goal was like, I'm going to be like that guy. I played with that guy. You know, 2 years ago, I played with him. He was an eighth grader. I was a seventh grader. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And so I got up there, and that was what it was. I mean, there was just this drive, like, again, I don't know. Like, I feel like that one moment, like, instilled in me that I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, no matter what. And then I was that guy that was motivated. You know, like there's some people who are motivated like a lab puppy dog, where like if you yell at the lab, that dog is going to go cower in the corner. And when you yelled at me, I was so disappointed in myself for not doing what you wanted me to do. So like I still remember my coach like yelling at me. And that was what motivated me. And that doesn't motivate everyone. But I was such a people pleaser that I wanted him to be, you know, I wanted him to be happy with the way that I was playing. And so I just I don't know, there was just this drive that I was always trying to make myself better because it made me happy when it happened, right? Like
Right.
it's monotonous, right? Football is monotonous. Like there, especially if you're a lineman, like it's can be unthankful at times. Like you can just be standing there and everyone else is getting the glory. You're looking at the receivers and the running backs who are scoring. And I always took it like, if that person scores, I've done my job because I've created the hole. I've held
Held the
the
line.
defensive lineman back from so that my guy can get off a pass. I mean, it just was fun. And then like every once in a while I get that awesome opportunity where I got to pull and I got to hit someone really hard. Because I was an offensive lineman and a lot of people like offensive lineman, that's boring. But to me, I was protecting someone. You know, it's kind of like that Michael Orr movie. Well, I like Sandra Bullock line with Michael Orr is like, this is your family and you got to protect your family. And like, that's, I don't know. It
You see
just
the
was a fun,
collective more
yeah,
as an individual.
right. And it was fun because that was the biggest thing. Like I tried a couple things. Like I played basketball when I was a freshman and I wish I would have kept playing. But my sophomore year, the coach who like basically I came from like football, I was good at, right? Like the other things I wasn't great at. I was okay at baseball. But as you level up, like I wasn't, I was a first baseman. I got hit in the face with a ball trying to dig one out. Our third baseman never could throw a straight ball, which as a first baseman, you need to not be afraid of the ball. And like I wasn't great at it. So like I played on JV all the way up until I was a senior because the senior, you know, you played 3 years, we're going to put you on varsity kind of
Right.
thing. I could hit really well, but that wasn't enough to stay in the game. And so I tried wrestling when I was a sophomore, and wrestling is like an individual sport. There's like a team score, but it's really individual because it's on you to win, right? And you have your coach. I mean, you obviously have those people in your corner, but like it's all on you. And I didn't like that. And I just decided that I wasn't going to play a winter sport and then just focus on lifting in the winter for baseball, which wasn't really, I mean, you don't really need to lift for baseball, but like working on those things.
Right.
Um, and so I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed baseball and I enjoy baseball now more than I did even so. Like, I don't even really watch a football game anymore because it just wasn't, which is kind of weird because baseball is like a combination, right? It's a combination of an individual sport and a team sport because what you
They
do
rely on
collectively.
you. Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. And there's just all these lessons that I learned from that. Like baseball is one of those things where you're a 300 hitter, you're good. You could be in the Hall of Fame. Um, Football, like if you do your job, you know, you could go play pro or you could do whatever whatever there is, but there's never like really, it's on you to be as good as you possibly can. And being on a team where someone brought you up and built that up in you. I don't know. I did enjoy it. I mean,
I
I just
find it
kept doing it.
fascinating that that a lot of people don't know. Like I follow you, so I know you're a big baseball fan. You like to go to spring training camps and whatnot, and visit friends while you're doing that, and kind of have some family time.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny to me. It stuck out that um, how you felt you were protecting someone. You're kind of part of this greater good, and knowing you, listening to your podcast, kind of what you're about, um, helping others and whatnot. You can see that, and then you look at. I mean, you didn't like wrestling because it was kind of that solo thing, but yet at some point, which kind of relates back to baseball, at some point you're a solo podcaster doing an individual thing, which, you kind of didn't like wrestling, which was that individual thing. But I think, kind of that connection to baseball that you mentioned of going like, you know, your podcast is for everyone to
Right.
enjoy, for you're giving something, you're serving, um, kind of like you were as a lineman. But, like in baseball, you're trying to be your best individual self as that individual podcaster for a greater collective. So it's interesting because I mean, I grew up playing sports, but at some point I became so small that I just kind of disregarded them altogether. But making that analogy for me, I was like, it helps me to understand you, um, like how you see things, um,
Yeah.
which is, you know, kind of like we talked about before as it goes into the Fortitude. I find it very interesting how you've described your sports career because not without knowing this story or this information about you, I would almost think that you were better at baseball because your love of baseball, and I had no idea like how you thought about that. So I find it very interesting. But
It
you've go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's crazy because everything that you're saying is like definitely like you got it spot on. I mean, it is solo right now, right? Like because I spent a long time doing interviews. And the idea was to always with that interview bring value to other people so that they can see that, you know, it's called shaping success because success is defined by you, right? You figure that out, whatever that may be. And if you want to be the best, babysitter in the world, go ahead and be the best babysitter in the world. If you want to be the best teacher, be the best teacher. But, you know, when I started, like when I got out of high school, my goal was to be a teacher because those people were the people who made the biggest difference in my life for me. Now, I wasn't a very good student and I had a really hard time in college the first time. Um, So I failed. I flunked out and ended up changing tires for 11 years and then injured myself and went back to college. And when I went back to college, I became that teacher and I became that coach. And a lot of things that shaped who I am now too came from that coaching experience from being on the other side of the ball because now I'm trying to teach these kids what I learned and also, make them better and have the drive that I had. Um, and you see it from a different side. And that was another thing that I got that gratitude from my coaches because, like with baseball, right? Like, I'm better than that kid, or I'm this, or I'm that. Like, you're sitting in the dugout, and I can see all these kids thinking that they're better, and their parents instill this in them that, like, that kid's not as good as you, and you should be out there playing, and blah, 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 blah. And then you have these parents coming at you. Why aren't you playing my kids? I mean, education is one of those things where, like, and I was a PE teacher. So, in elementary school, you teach those kids differently than you teach middle school kids, and you teach the
Right.
middle school kids different than you teach the high school kids. And they all have different skill levels and they're all learning different things. But when it comes down to it, like I was the freshman coach my very last year, when it came down to it on the baseball team, as a freshman, we want to get everyone as much chance to play as they can. We want them to have as much experience as they can. And then they have a tournament at the end. And if you get to that tournament, which we did, my team was very good. Everyone got a chance to play in the middle of the year. Now we're going to put the best 9 on that field that we can because we have to, because now we're going to try and win. This championship is this is where we're at. And I had a parent get mad at me in the middle of the game because I pulled his kid out after my starting pitcher was done throwing. I pulled him out. I put my starting pitcher at shortstop because he's a better shortstop than his kid. And then the parent walks by and just cussed me out because I did that. And I was like, you know what? Your kid's not that good. And you want to, like, that's how I felt, but I didn't say it. But like now I see why things were the way that they were, and I didn't see it then. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. That's kind of one of those things, like being a parent, and I'm sure, like with your kids versus like let's say when you were teaching, I don't know, like where do you that fine line of trying to explain to kids this is why things are the way they are, maybe so they understand a why um that you waited so many years to gather by becoming a teacher. Because I mean, the other night, like my daughter asked me something, and it was something about being reminded of like, hey, it's 9 o'clock. Do you have your clothes picked out for tomorrow? Do you have this? Do you have that? And she's tired of being reminded. And I told her a long time ago, if you don't want to be reminded at this time, you have these things done.
Right.
And I told her the same thing, and she got mad and she goes, well, you're telling me the same thing you told me last time, and I thought you would tell me a different answer. And I said, nope, it's not the way it works. But, and I said that answer will never change. And she's 10. And, you as a parent or as a coach, there's that line you have to go like, when is it appropriate to kind of give them a little bit of truth? Um, but, as it is with your kids, or if you're a coach, a mentor, a leader, um, you need to believe in those kids. Or even when I was a manager in healthcare, you need to believe in your team. You need to believe in your nurses and your
Right.
doctors. Um, but then there's also that point of you got to put the right people in the right places to succeed. I mean, I can't put a nurse who's not top notch with your fastest provider who sees the most patients per day.
Right.
It's going to throw off everything. And there's kind of a point where, for some people, you have to give them a little bit of truth. And I think that's a tricky part as a parent, as a leader. And I'm sure it's got to be very challenging as a coach and a teacher, because they're other people's kids,
Right.
but you want to believe in them. But, that was kind of what we were going to touch on. You mentioned that you were a teacher, and there was an episode of yours that I listened to, that that's kind of where, you mentioned, hey, I talk to this many people this many times per day. Like, because, with, because I'm going to ask you, when did you first listen to a podcast? When and why did you start one? And the other day I was listening to Joe Rogan with Cat Williams, and Cat Williams had said, as a kid, we grow up talking is so easy. It comes naturally. So then people grow up and they see whether it's comedians, podcasters, speakers, and they're like, "Oh, I can do this. I can talk for a living." It's so easy just to talk, but it's really not. It takes a little bit of practice. I took communications in college. I was a healthcare manager. I had to have regular meetings. I had to talk to doctors. I had to talk to VPs. I had to go and ask the CFO of the hospital, can I have an extra position?
Right.
So you have to be well spoken. But when did you first start listening to podcasts? For me, it was about 2017.
Yeah, I'd have to say probably the first one that I heard, like I had when I was coaching, when I was probably around there sometime, 2018, I would say, because when I was coaching with a kid who's like, hey, I listened to this podcast. He is, probably a couple years out of high school. He's like, I listened to this podcast and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, what's that? Like, what's a podcast? Like, I kind of know what they are. To me, it was kind of like, oh, it's talk radio, because that's the era that I'm from.
Yeah,
Um, it's like
like a
I
blog,
picture
like a spoken blog.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, whatever. I'm not really into that. And then, it pops up on your phone because you got an Apple phone. And it's like, oh, there's Apple Podcast. And you start listening to them. And the very first one that I ever listened to, it's kind of funny because I'm like a big DC guy. Like I love Superman. Is like, you know, when I was a kid, I was a big Superman person. And now I have like this whole hat DC sleeve on my arm. And but Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor on Smallville, had a podcast. And so it was called Inside of You. And it's basically, he talks about it's like mental health, but he's interviewing these people that he knows and just talking to them about their mental health journey and the types of things that they're doing. And he always brings up like, it's funny. He's like, well, how does that work? Do you go to therapy? Do you do this? Do you do that? And blah, blah, blah. But it was just intriguing to me, the conversation of that, because I'm interested in people's lives. Like I listen to books when I'm driving. Um, I listen to podcasts with interviews with real people. That's the ones that I enjoy the most. And so anyway, I was listening to him, and then I kind of ran into Dax Shepard a little bit too, which I don't listen to anymore because I don't know, like it started going off on a different direction with him, where I feel like Michael kind of just keeps it more um, real. Dax is kind of like you can see the project that like his production, and I do listen to like Joe Rogan from time to time, but like that's everyone's go-to, right?
Right.
I'm not a big like you'll notice like mine are kind of short. Like my morning coffee is definitely short, but like when I do an interview, unless it's someone that's really big and I feel like I need to give them way more time, um, they're usually around an hour or so. Sometimes they go over. Like I interviewed Chris Henderson from Three Doors Down, which like on a whim, I just got him on Instagram to say, hey, yeah, I'll do it. And he hopped on. I gave him like an hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes because the story was good. Like, and that, you know, like with normal people too, like with, and I say normal because no one's really normal, but like if I was to have you on and the conversation was going in a direction that it was going to go more than an hour, like as long as it was consistent and I wasn't like, because if I'm getting bored, that means that other people are getting bored,
Right.
right. And so you want to keep that going. So, yeah, that was, I mean, that was kind of the start. And then I ended up, what happened was someone introduced me to Gary Vee. Actually, my barber introduced me to Gary. Hey, have you ever heard of Gary Vee? And I'm like, no, I haven't heard of that guy. He goes, he's got a podcast, but you should read this book. And he had Crush It. And I read, or the one that I downloaded was Crushing It. And I was reading a bunch of books at the time, like actually physically reading them before I discovered Audible. And Gary Vee started talking about these other people. So this is where the podcasting, like I'm tying this all together because this is where the podcasting thing kind of came into play. So he was talking about Lewis Howes and Grant Cardone and I'm trying to think who else there was. But like basically I started my Instagram account off of that.
Right.
And then I started following those people. And I'm like, I'm going to listen to this guy's got a podcast. I'm going to listen to it. So I listened to Lewis Howes, who is kind of like like I would say the modern day Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah. I listen
like Tony,
to him.
Yeah. So Tony Robbins is great, but like he's, I don't know, almost 70, right?
Yeah.
He's older. And
68.
Lewis is more our age, played football, talks about his life and who he was and basically how he couldn't read and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Then he starts interviewing all these other people. And so I'm listening to Lewis Howes and I start to think, you know, this is cool. I could do this. Like I would love to. So I had switched positions. I'm not a teacher anymore, right? Well, I'm in my mind, I'm a teacher. Like I'm always a teacher. No matter what I do is to educate other people. And I enjoy doing that. Like I sell window coverings, but I'm educating every single customer that I go to on the products that we have. And in the end, I'm asking for money, but that's kind of the difference. Like I'm not asking for money as a teacher, but, so I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. And I had met with a guy just on LinkedIn that had messaged me and we're trying to make the dots all connect. And we're like, hey, let's start a podcast. Let's do like a co-host. Let's pull in like people from the Valley. Cause he's a commercial real estate, realtor and I'm a window covering salesman and I can knock on these doors and talk to these people and say, hey, you want to do a little interview and we'll post it on YouTube or whatever. And then they'll get them to kind of want to use us as their commercial real estate or their window covering salesman. And I realized that I didn't like we one way or another, like we trying to connect all the dots and try and make that work. And he lived in Boise. I lived in Star, which is like 30-45 minute drive. Our lives didn't really connect. It was tough to get him to my place. It was tough to get to his place. You know, I had kids, he's younger. Anyway, I'm like, all right, well, let's do this. Like, you do an interview, we'll post it on the same thing. I'll do an interview, we'll post it on the same thing. So like, we'll just keep it going. And we couldn't figure out how to upload podcasts, which, you know, is the dumbest excuse that there possibly is because I couldn't figure it out. And then one day I just realized all I got to do is drag the video and drop it in there and it'll do it on its own. And once I had that, it popped. And then I started realizing that I wanted, like, I'm interviewing the people that I was interviewing. I was doing the same thing and I didn't have to do it with just people locally. And it became more about like just finding people. And so I started finding people that inspired me. And I kind of hopped on TikTok and like right before COVID, which I mean, I'm at 24K on my followers right now, but I spent tons of time in 500. Like 24K came after someone beat me up on TikTok. And I had this video that went viral because that's when you get a lot of followers. Like, but most of the people who followed me were from this one video. And it was just crazy, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, like I got into the podcast, I started interviewing people started using those other avenues like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook as a platform, just kind of like you're starting out to do and you're learning to push out the episodes and drive people to the podcast to listen to it. So, which, it's kind of changed over time because I've started to realize that a lot of times when I interview people, you're telling their story, but you're not telling your story. And so to get to be on an interview like yours, I get to tell my story. And I've done probably 7 or 8 podcasts where people have actually invited me on their show, which is, and I might not advocate enough for myself to be on other people's shows, but I don't want, hey, can I be on your podcast? I don't want to do that. Like it's not me. If they want me, if they feel that I have value to add to their platform, to their
Right.
people, then have me on. If not, I'm not going to push you to do it. So I don't know. I mean, it's just been one of those things where it's continued to go. So like it's always been changing. Like the first year was interview. I didn't have an interview. I didn't do a show. Like I tried to do it weekly, but I couldn't always find someone who wanted to hop on. So they weren't always people that I wanted to be on. It was just getting people on and practicing, right? And
Right.
talking. And then I'd get that one that I really liked. Like I had my very first like huge one was Mark Simo, who I just kind of like ran into this person who if you don't know who Mark Simo is, he's the guy who created No Fear. I'm sure you wore No Fear clothing growing up. Now he has a vodka brand called Trust Me Vodka, which he's, working, and got him on. And I talked to him, and that was like the most downloaded episode for a while. And then I met some guy he was like a promoter for like these actors. And he wasn't like not really high A-list actors or whatever, but he would give me these actors and I'd interview them. And then I met my friend Jay, who I co-host with One Drink Wednesday, who helped me get Noah Nelson on, who Noah Nelson is Craig T. Nelson's son. So that was another big one. And then I had a pursuit of trying to get Hunter Pence on my podcast for a while. Like I was pushing really hard to try and get him on, and he just like, it didn't work. Like I got so far, but it was like the last year of his MLB career, and he didn't do it. Like I talked to his wife, I talked to his promoter or whatever. I got it to a certain extent and talked to him. But like I started going like, you know what? If these people don't want to talk to me, and if they don't want to be on here, and they don't really know who I am, now I need to give people a reason to want to be here. And transitioning from my first like kind of in-home office into this space where we were renting, and now I have this studio, I can just come out here every morning and talk. I mean, and like Robert Watson, who we're going through his book that just came out. Like I've been doing that with him every Wednesday, but I had him on the podcast and we're talking about that. And like, that can be a separate show,
Right.
So Shaping Success was kind of like, and this is kind of where I'm at right now. Shaping Success, even though it's Shaping Success Morning Coffee, Shaping Success is actually like the interview mode, Morning Coffee is the me mode. And then we're doing the Robert Watson book review thing on Wednesday, and he may have something else. And I'm just trying to grow this Shaping Success network is what it really is. Which I don't know, like I expected that to be something big for a long time, and it never really had taken off that way, but I'm gotten to the point where I'm a little more patient with it, and I'm allowing it to kind of just happen,
Did it start off as Shaping Success? As Success, was that the name, and how did you come up with it? If so,
No, it didn't start out as Shaping Success because what happened was that's a good story too. So what happened was like we called it Treasure Valley Max Media, and it was like that's what it was, because Treasure Valley is where I live. We want to get these people from the Treasure Valley in there. And once Kyle, my friend, and I decided that it wasn't going to work out between the two of us trying to do it, I just went off on my own. And at that point, I was talking to another friend of mine, another kid that I coached in high school, and his dad was into like social media stuff. He's really this tech nerd. And they approached me because I was doing this to like, hey, can we produce your show? Because they had this other program, but what I found was I didn't really like the way that it was working. So I did that for a year with him. But at that time, we're like, what are we going to call this? What should we call it? And I started going through like my Rolodex of things that happened to me, and figured out like why I want to do what I want to do. Like it's always about teaching people. And I went back to this moment where there's this kid that I didn't go to, he was in the same grade as me in high school. I was a year younger than me. And he at one point said to me, he goes, you know what? And I don't know where the conversation come, but I remember this part of it. He goes, I'm going to be twice as successful as you when we get older. He goes, I'm going to be way better than you. I'm going to be so much more successful than you. And I was just like, how can you tell me what that is? How can you be the person who defines what my success is? Like, you can't say that you're more successful than me. I could go flip burgers and be really good at it and be successful. What's success to you? And like everyone always thinks about money, or material things and stuff like that.
Position.
Well, what's that?
Position.
Position. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So like, this is it. Like, that's what's successful to you. Well, it's not. Like, that's not to me. Like, fulfillment is success to me. And how are you fulfilled? And how are you reaching that fulfillment? And you thinking of all those things, like, that was just it. It was like, well, how can we put success in this? And like, what is it? And then the shaping part just kind of went in. It's like, we're shaping our success daily. And what is the shape of your success? Like, what does that look like to you? And so for some people, maybe a triangle, some people maybe a circle, some people, I mean, there's all these different things, and you define that. Like, you build that, you create that,
Yeah, and that kind of, so you said you started, how soon after listening to a podcast did you start it? Like, what was the window?
It was probably pretty quick. I mean, what happened was I had quit teaching, right? So I went from, and it's so funny because I can tell you that it was scary, right? Like, the job that I went into is 100% commission. I went from a job where I was making a salary. It was guaranteed every single day or every single month I was going to get the same amount. I had some money that was getting put away into retirement. You go to the same job every single day. Teaching is not going anywhere, right? Like, it's never like,
All you got to do is show up to get whatever it is. That remains consistent as long as you show up.
Yep. And with a person like me, that gets kind of monotonous after a while, because like, you're just, here I am. And I can see people going through the motions, and some people like that. That's great. That's the shape of their success.
Right.
But it wasn't mine. Like, I wanted more. Like, I wanted to be in charge of people. I wanted to be like, if I was the PE teacher, I wanted to be the head of the department. But then there's all this succession that doesn't really mean anything, because like, the head of the department is always going to be the person who has been there the longest, right? Like, and that's bullshit, because they're not normally the best person to do that job. And so like, I had to struggle with that. And then like, well, maybe I'll become an administrator. But then being an administrator sucks, because you have to, like, there's all these things that you'd have to do and all these hoops you had to jump through. And starting teaching in Idaho is like $38,000 a year. So it's not very good. And I did it for 4 years. So like, every year I got $1,000 a year raise, and I was at 42. And
hey, everyone. At the Podcast Connection Network, we bring you incredible independent voices. But as passionate creators, we rely on your support to thrive. Here's how you can help for free. Subscribe and listen. Regular listens tell platforms our shows matter. Rate and review. Your feedback helps others find us and shows advertisers our value. Share the love. Tell friends and online communities about your favorite shows. These simple actions make a huge difference. You're supporting independent creators and keeping their voices alive.
As I was teaching the 4 years I taught, I got my master's degree. So like, I got that piece of paper from my master's degree after I decided that I wasn't going to teach anymore, but I knew I was going to finish it because I'd already started it. So I might as well have it.
Right.
And so
it's about the process.
Yeah, exactly. But again, like, a lot of people are like, well, why did I waste my time? Like, I'm sitting there going, well, I just wasted a lot of time and money on this. But in reality, everything that I got from that helped me to be here. Right. Like, it helped me to be a better speaker, because I had to talk in front of 30, like we were talking about earlier, like 7 days, 7 periods a day. I had to talk to 30 different kids, say the same thing over and over again. But by the 7th time, like, it's better than it was the first time. Like, it always just, that's the way that I always looked at it, is like, how can I make it better every single time? Well, this didn't work. Like, they're running around, like, as little as like running around the cones. Well, I'm going to explain that better. I'm going to show them better. I'm going to do whatever to make it better. And that was kind of the deal. But I had taken this job as 100% commission. And when I talked to my boss at the time, like, it's scary. There's zero. Like you're starting at zero. You have nothing. And so you have to go and make a sale in order to get something. And if you don't make that sale, you get nothing. And if you're not good at that job, he's going to get rid of you because he doesn't want you. He doesn't want people who aren't going to make him money. And so I had met a friend of mine, his nephew actually met me at this place that I was working part-time while I was teaching. He goes, "What do you do here? How much do you make here? Why don't you come work for us?" And then I started talking to my wife about it. I'm like, his brother made this much money. And, you basically just drive around and have appointments with people, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, it was a pretty easy gig and I could make way more money. We could afford to survive more because like we're living paycheck to paycheck, which money doesn't change that. Like you make more money, you spend more money. So like I'm
Right.
still in the same situation because I'm not very smart with my money, but I needed to be smarter with it. But like he hired me and then he immediately hired 2 people, not 1. And so that meant that like they have these leads that are generated. I've got to create my own because if I get a direct one, like if someone calls me directly, I make more money. But he hired another person, and that other person that he hired took away from that pool as well. So it's like, what do we do? So then I start as I analyze things, because that's how I am. Like I'm analytical of it. All right, there's these 5 salesmen, there's all these leads. I have 2 today. I should have 5. I could handle 5 a day. I don't have those. Now I got to go try and find more. That's where I started going the way that I was going. And it got to a point where like I had gotten to the middle of the summer, which is supposed to be the busiest time of the year. And something happened with the company. And I ended up I went back from like 3 or 4 leads a day. And then he cut one of his businesses that he had because it wasn't profitable because he had more than one business in there. And then took one of those people from that business and put it into a sales position. Now all of a sudden the leads are just gone. So we have too many salespeople. I got lucky because that pay period, I walked into a house and I had a sale that was big enough to that pay period be as much as, having like 20 appointments because it was a really big sale. And it was crazy because I'd only been working there like 3 or 4 months. And at the time it was the biggest sale in company history. And some people weren't happy about that because I ran into that one. I was like, how'd you get this one? And it was like, whatever. I made the most of it. I did what I did. And so then it was constantly trying to make more. And so I don't know. I mean, it's scary at first, but then you start to realize that no matter what you're doing, if you can just put your best foot forward, it's going to be fruitful. And I think that's what's got me where I am, is like just the drive to continue to keep doing it.
Yeah. Like since after being laid off in the pandemic, I do the podcast, but then also Uber, but I'm kind of my wife is the more steady person. So if kids are sick or something, I'm the go-to to stay home,
Right.
doctor's appointments and all that. So I maintain more flexibility, but it's the same. If you don't work, you don't make money.
Right.
But I find where I'm sure in that part, because I think this probably ties into who you are. At some point, like, yes, you're looking to sell because your livelihood is tied to that. But
Right.
at some point, to be successful, is it almost like you need to let go of trying to sell so hard and maybe make the connection with the people? And if you connect to the people, then they're more comfortable to do business with you because they feel like they're doing business with a good person who's going to do them right, essentially. And even if they can't do the business today, maybe they come back and do the business later when they're able to because they remember and they had a connection with you. Have you run across that?
So as I'm talking to you and you're telling me that, like my first thing is to go to like a car salesman, right? Like that's their job. And I never go into, like, I know that I'm going to make money, right? Like that's
Right.
the thing. Like I know that I'm going to make it, but I never go into a sales. And I think that's what kind of sets me apart from other people. Like obviously at the end, there's an ask, right? Like, okay, so this is how much it is. This is what it's going to be. But I walk into a house looking around, trying to find a connection with the customer every single time. And hey, here's this. Here's, like I had a great customer yesterday that I walk in, shake his wife's hand. He's not quite there yet. We've been talking back and forth for a while. And I got to talk to him a little bit after. I'm like, I'm hanging up temp shades. Even after the sale, we're talking and I'm relating and I'm trying to create this connection because I really think like being connected to people is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, learned from her that she was a realtor and that these, you know, like they had it's a brand new house and they had these appliances, like they told them they didn't want them. And like the process of like having brand new appliances is because they didn't like it. They had to get rid of the other ones, blah, 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 whatever. Like I know the whole situation that was going on there. And then I got a chance to talk to him after. And he's a pretty successful guy who started a vape shop like a long time ago before vaping was huge. And whether you like vaping or not, this is kind of like an entrepreneurial thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so he
Yeah.
started this vape shop and we were talking about like COVID, same thing here. Or like COVID became a huge thing because all people were doing was sitting at home and then they needed their vape, you know, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's when they got so busy. And then, you know, this is what I did. I had a partner. We started another company, and between here and there, and like it's one of those deals. Like people are willing to work and willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. That's what drives me. It's like this podcast for me is like something in addition to what I'm doing. I wish it was what it was, but I'm not going to stop
Right.
doing it because it could be more. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I'm not that salesman. Like I'm the type of person that like I'm going to educate you. I'm going to give you all the information you want. And I feel like people come back to me for that. Like there's been times where I've walked into a house and I'm like, this is how much it is. I walk away. They look at me and they go, okay, we'll let you know. And then 2 days later, I'll get a phone call. It's like, you know, this other company came in, they gave us a quote. It was the same price, or it was a little bit more, but, or yours was a little bit more, but we like you. And you were very forthright with us. We didn't like the other person. We felt like they were kind of rude, blah, 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 blah. Or they just expected this. Like they're that other salesperson. Like, and they
The
pressured us to do
cringy one.
this. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And that's what people think of when they think of sales. Like, I like Grant Cardone, but like listening to some of the stuff that guy does, it's like it's a hard sell every single time. And
Right.
I'm not going to do that. And maybe he makes more money because of that, but I don't. Like, I'm not going to do that. I make plenty of money and I don't want to lose who I am to make the other person feel
Well,
uncomfortable.
well, it's kind of like I would equate it like a long-term strategy. You know, it's um like with Ubering. You look at the collective. You don't know unless you go out and try. Some days, you know, they give you these projections, but the projections are a 4-week average.
Right.
And, you know, um, sometimes it's like fishing. It can suck, and sometimes it's really good. But the value, you know, I say overall, it works out collectively, but the value is in the end, whether it's the flexibility that it allows, the whatever, you know, and it kind of like related to shaping success. I mean, what does success mean to you? You know, yes, I have a podcast. Ultimately, I would love to do this and this be the way that I earn money, or make a living, because this is what I enjoy. But I also enjoy getting other people's story out there.
Right.
But, you know, it's just because I'm an Uber driver doesn't mean that, you know, in whatever I do, I'm going to give it 100% and be the best I can be. I'm going to make sure, you know, I come up working in restaurants. So I'm big on food. I'm big on people pleasing. If, you know, and food cooking is one of those ways to get immediate feedback if
Right.
you're doing well or not. And so in a delivery, it's like, hey, if I can get your stuff to you fast and whatever. And I mean, my earnings, my tips, and my satisfaction ratings and all that show that. And, you know, but the value is in it allows me to do this. It allows me, kind of like your job, being able to ride around for 5 or 6 hours a day and listen to Audible books on personal development, listening to
Right.
podcasts. Um, to me, that's the value. And it's kind of like this long-term strategy of going, hey, I'm gonna it's gonna work out eventually, however it works out. But I'm just gonna keep doing what I feel passionate about, what I feel my purpose is, however that looks.
Right.
And, I just started the podcast in July of last year. But I know you started years ago. You have um, an incredible amount of downloads. You have a YouTube following, lots of subscribers comparison. But I think too, you've brought up a good point in some of your videos that people can go and watch on YouTube. Um, that it's definitely not like you think. And, you
Right.
know, I didn't expect to make money right away. That's not why I even started a podcast. Um, but ultimately you would like to. But it's kind of like a, you know, what is it that, because I look at you and I go, okay, how am I gonna 4 years from now, 5 years from now, am I gonna be still have that passion that Wes has, that drive, that fortitude that we talked about in the beginning? Um, what is it that kind of keeps you going, and what have been some of the challenges, or how has it been different than what you thought when you started?
I think like everyone, people think that like with podcasting, it's a perception versus reality is what you're really talking about. Like people perceive what they see because like on your For You page, you see me all the time because you like what I do and it pops up all the time, right? That doesn't mean that it pops up on everyone's page, right? That doesn't mean that I'm getting, and if you really want to know what people are getting, like just go look. You can go look and see how many views that video had. Like you can go see that I have one video that was 1.2 million views that happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was no reason, no rhyme or reason. Some guy said that he didn't understand why bacon didn't come in a resealable package. And I just sat there and I had my sunglasses on, and then the other guy pops on and goes, "You have leftover bacon?" And I flipped up my sunglasses. Like 1.2 million views. I posted the same damn video 2 years ago and it got like 200. So
Wow.
there's no rhyme or reason for it because it was a this day in history or on this day or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever that
yeah,
I
I
just
remember it.
reposted. Didn't matter. So it's kind of funny how that happens, but like people think that this is happening. And so you go into it thinking, all right, I'm going to pop in there because I saw Lewis Howes do this and he's really good. And Grant Cardone's doing this and Gary Vee's doing this. And Gary Vee's telling you just post, 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 post. And that's where I'm at. It's like I just post when I feel like it. And I post as much as I possibly can. And so what happens when you do that is more people see you. But it takes that one moment, and I haven't seen that one moment yet. Like you're trying to find the chain reaction, right? And so I'm going to continue doing whatever it takes. The interviews didn't work, right? Like how many people know who like one of my favorite interviews I did was with Jake Rose, the lead singer of New Medicine. How many people know who Jake Rose is? It's like New Medicine's not a huge band. You have to really know who that is and you have to find the right way. Like if I interviewed, you look at Travis Kelce. How many
Hmm.
people knew who Travis Kelce was until he started dating? Like they knew who he was, but now they really know who he is because he's dating Taylor Swift. It's like, when's that one moment going to happen? That's going to
Yeah.
pop. That's going to make it all happen. But it hasn't happened. You know, I think I have like, I have to look at it. I think I have like 3,280 subscribers on YouTube. Well, people don't understand that it takes like 10,000 views on one video to make a buck. So, what do you have to do in order to make enough money to cover your salary? Like a buck a day or one video that's like 10,000. I probably 2 or 3 videos, and I've had a YouTube channel for 4 years that have hit 10,000. So, there's a dollar. Like I look at my monthly earnings, it's going to be $4. Cool. That's where it's at. You know, when that becomes $1,000, I'll be happy.
Right.
But, I mean, I'll be happier, but still $1,000 isn't enough to cover my thing. So,
Yeah.
you have to realize that it's a long game. It's not a short game. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to keep doing it. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that's going to happen, but that perception is always like you're killing it. Well, you're not. Like, and I think that the littlest things that people don't understand is that what they can do is they can go and they can listen to your podcast. I haven't looked at my audio download numbers for, I'm not going to look at them until the end of the month. So I got another week or
I
so
avoid
because
it too.
yeah, I told myself because I was looking at it, like I became a slave to it. Like I'm sitting there like, here's a day that I got 13 downloads. Here's a day that I got 14 downloads. It's like, how many am I going to get? And that number is going to creep because I get 14, 15 a day, 5 days a week now instead of 1 day a week. Um, and historically, they're a lot higher because someone will go like, maybe you went and listened to like 20 episodes because you're getting ready to ramp up and listen to, you want to talk to me, you want to know a little bit more about me. And that's what I do. Like I go and I listen to whoever I'm going to interview. I try to find a podcast that they were
Right.
on to kind of find more about them and do that research. But then that's one time, right? Like it's not like you didn't subscribe. Maybe you subscribed, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you just listened to one episode. And I have like 10 podcasts that I subscribe to. I don't listen to every episode that comes out, even though there's new one every week. Like Michael Rosenbaum, I still listen to him. But when I scroll through and I see that it's not someone I know, maybe it is interesting, but I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to this one because I need to buy my time where I'm going to put it. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the hard with kind of. I was thinking about that last night. Like I was watching some of your YouTube videos and listening to podcasts, and I'm like, when you're in the car and you're driving, you have this time. But then when you're like at home, you're trying to be dad, you're trying to be husband, but then you're also trying to do your thing that you have a passion for. But it's like you can only take in audio visual, like kind of one at a time. If I'm watching YouTube trying to, I can't be listening to another podcast on the phone while watching
Right.
a YouTube video. So it's limiting in that way. And sometimes like you don't have all the time to um consume everything you would want to consume.
When
As
you
a
think
pot
about it, like I was talking to someone the other day who we were talking about books, right?
uh
I was actually in Houston and I was, because that was when I was in Texas and I was talking to this guy about books. And I was like, yeah, I listen to him every day when I'm driving around. And he goes, I like listening to him, but I have found that I don't get everything out of the book when I listen to it because reading one forces you to be doing one thing and listening to it doesn't. So like how many times do you miss something that was said, because you're in the middle of something else. You get a phone call. I was
yeah.
listening to it. Boom, phone call. Now I can't remember where I was at. Oh yeah, that's right. That's where I was, those types of things. But yeah, it is. Life's distractions do get in the way sometimes and they stop you from doing the things that you want to do.
What's going to keep you um where do you see yourself in the next 2 years? Like let's say with the podcast, is there anything different you want to do? Is there anything different you want to focus on? Or are you, I mean, I enjoy the morning coffee. I enjoy the
Mhm.
whether it's sometimes it can be 10 minutes, sometimes it can be 25, but I enjoy kind of the short little motivation first thing in the morning, something to think about, something that reminds me to, I think, dig deep, go one more, try one more
Right.
time, keep going. Um, what do you see happening in the next couple of years? Or what do you envision?
So like, I mean, I honestly, like, I talk a lot about where do I see it going? Like and I made this shirt. It says move forward on it. You
Mhm.
can't really, you guys can't see it, but like move forward to me means that I'm going to continue to keep making that forward progress. One step at a time, 1 mile at a time, one, marathon at a time, whatever. Like, and I feel like it's a long game. I feel like, again, like that chain reaction hasn't happened yet. I hope that it does. But my hope is to be, in the next, I made the goal this year to be at 10,000 YouTube subscribers this year. Which I'm a long ways away from, but there's a long ways left in the time. And so, like, what is it going to take to get there?
One chain
Um,
reaction.
one chain reaction, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like there's these baby steps that will continue happen, and there's no rhyme or reason why anything happens. Again, like that 1.2 million view, someone's talking about bacon. But my goal is to have, like I'm close to. I have over. My goal was to make it to 300 episodes. I've done that, and that's going to happen faster because there's 365 days a year and I'm doing it 5 days, 5 days a week. So it's going to happen. Well, most of the time, 5 days a week. Um, I need to stop making excuses of why I don't get up and do it, because sometimes I just don't feel like it. And I don't want to come in here going and like, maybe I do need to do that. I don't feel like it today, guys. I'm not, I just don't. Like those are the things that people need to see, that you're not always motivated to do it. There are those downtimes. And so I try to kind of wear my heart on my sleeve with that for the most part. But yeah, I mean, I would love to get to 100,000 downloads on the audio portion. Like it was always been about the audio portion, but I found that the video thing is there. And so like the quality is here now. You know, I've got the really good camera. I've got the really good sound treatment inside my studio. I have the ability to just come out here and record when I want to. Just hone it, just be better, become a better speaker, because we're all trying to get to that 10,000 hours, right? Which if people don't know, like 10,000 hours is like what it takes to be proficient at it. And if you think about that, say I did 325 episodes at 30 minutes, we're not there. We're a long ways away from there. So just continuing doing it, continuing to find the way to push content out there, get it in the right spot. So
Have you found the process to be fun? Like, you know, like even watching that video last night, where you were recording before versus the studio you have now, like
yeah,
just to see the growth and the process and cameras and finding better ways to do things. Have you found it enjoyable, frustrating, challenging, or all the above?
it's pretty much all of the above. Like I'm trying every single day. Like I'll tell you, this camera thing, I've had this camera since November. Um, and I just finally made it work a month ago. It's like when I made it work, I was like, what have I been doing? Why? And that's a kind of the aha moment, right? Like we talked about like uploading the first podcast. Like it was like, how in the heck is this supposed to work? And it's like, this was way easier than what it needed to be. Like I made this
Yeah.
way harder than what it is. So that's a little frustration. But then when it's there, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Um, I think about like, you know, like the back wall. Like there's a lot of sound. Like this room is actually soundproof. When I built the house, I had them put soundproof insulation inside the walls, but that's not enough. Like people don't understand that. Like you have to still do sound treatment. So like I have all these sound boards in front of me that are absorbing me talking off the wall, plus whatever bounces off of there, bouncing off this. And you know, I got the lighting. Like I pretty much have everything I need to make it what it is. Now, like the only thing that I can do to make it any better, which I just don't have time for, is to edit it more and to, you know, create that. So I've got it to a point where it's pretty seamless. Like I basically have to walk out here. The biggest problem that I have is just like you had in the beginning.
Technical.
I had to restart my computer this morning. I told you that. Like I didn't have to restart it, but for some reason it was off. I never turned it off, but it was off. I came in here, I had to boot it back up. And because of all the crap I have going on it, like it takes forever to get it going. Um, so I'm like, I might be a little bit late, but I got it up, and then it's just those little things. But I've made it to the point where I can just walk out here, turn on Ecamm. As long as the internet's working, as long as everything goes the way it's supposed to go, I just go out and do it. So I'm gonna do it. And there are days where it won't boot up fast enough, which is annoying. And I have such a small slot of time that
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, just not gonna do it, you know. But
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. I think we're very similar. Um,
it sounds like it.
in our pursuits, especially like when I look back and I go, we're probably both doing something totally different than we went to school for. We both have master's degrees, and and a lot of people would probably look at what we do and go, why? But I think getting your master's, like, to me, it wasn't the information's the information. It's
Right.
not about that. It's about the exposure, the practice, the juggling, being a parent, having a job, getting your master's, sacrificing all the stuff you do that shows you what you're capable of doing. And to understand that and to go, it was about the process, I think is the same thing. Um, when I look at Fortitude, when I look at you, when I look at where I'm at beginning a podcast and where you are having had a podcast for some years now, it's that understanding that the enjoyment or that you're getting something from the daily grind, from the
Right.
process, from the trying, from the keep pushing forward from, and kind of like you, I don't know, like we both have master's degrees, but maybe we were just too dumb to quit sometimes, you
You
know?
know, I I honestly like I feel like it's all about challenging yourself, right? Like I mean, I think
Yeah,
the biggest thing for me was like I knew when I was getting my master's degree that I'm not what would I what would I not doing that done? Like I would have just been going through the monotony of just continuing to just be a teacher every single day.
right. You
And I
needed
never wanted to
growth.
I did. And that's what it did. Like I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, my master's degree I got it online. I damn near got a 4.0 on it, but what it did teach me, taught me how to write a good paper. I mean, that's really what it was. It was all about writing papers.
Yeah,
Um,
communication.
and yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It taught me how to write a good paper. Teaching taught me how to talk. Like, if you can take that lesson, but like, I maximize my time in everything I do. And I think that a lot of people are like, I don't have time to do that. And it's like, okay, well, you do, but think about where you're placing your time. Like,
Right.
I wrote papers on my prep period. I, for my master's degree, I came home, spent time with my daughter, wrote papers at night. My daughter wasn't home from daycare yet, wrote papers there. Like, I mean, you find the time. Like my job today, there was other people that I work with who don't have time to do it. I came home yesterday and I had 4 or 5 appointments. I quoted each and every single one of them. I sent over the quotes for the 4 that I sold. I put in the orders. I mean, it's like I maximize my time in between these appointments. Like I'll go to my first one, I'll sell it. I'll either go find a place 5 minutes from where the other one is and take care of the back end part of that at that place, get it done, go to the next one. And it's like, it's all about time management and finding a process and doing the best you can at whatever it is. And you will find the time. Don't say you don't like time is it's the biggest excuse that I've ever heard. It's like, I get it, but find time. You don't like
When
it?
did
Get up
when did
or
it click for you? Like when did you always have that, or when did you develop it? Other than when you
I,
had to.
I don't know. Like, I feel like it's just been something that's driven into me. Like, it's like even when I was changing tires, it was like, what's the most efficient way to change 8 truck tires? Like,
Right.
I wasn't the person who was going to go stand out on the, like, they send they give the people the jobs that are the fastest, the best jobs. Or like, I didn't like talking in or changing car tires. Like, I would rather be out on the truck slab because it was something that I could just go, you know? And to go out and change 8 drive tires in 30 minutes, no one ever did that, but I had a process. It was like I still remember it. Like, I bet you I could be pretty close to what it was now,
That would be
15
fun.
years later. Yeah, it would be fun to go. And that's what I have a buddy that lives in Texas that he still sells tires for a living. And um he's like he's out there changing. I'm like, man, I just like to like, he's posting videos on Facebook trying to get business to come to him or whatever. And I'm like, I wish I could just do that just one more time. I told him, like, I wonder how fast I'd be now. Like, not as fast as him because he obviously continues to do it every single day, but you don't forget how to do it. It's
Yeah.
just it's a different time.
And there's something about, my uncle's been in construction his whole life and he's about to retire. And something about people who do that kind of work their whole life, they're they're just built different. Like you
Right.
said, you had an injury, and one of the things that my father worked construction, hurt his back, and was like, went to college, ended up with degrees as well. But he was like, you got to use your brain because your body's going to give out.
Right.
Um, and, you know, I think about that. But now that I'm older, it's kind of like this, I mean, I went back to college when I was cooking and working in kitchens, and I would see somebody. I was in my 20s and I saw somebody who was 45 working 2 kitchen jobs. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be 45 working 2 kitchen jobs or sweating. It's hard. You get burned, you get cut, you can hurt your
Right.
back. And I decided to go back to college, but now that I'm older, it's like you enjoy the physicality a little bit more. You
Mm-hmm.
want to be in shape or you want to kind of still have it, but at the same time, I'm thankful I don't have to rely on earning a living like with my body, because
Yeah.
knowing that, you forget how fast until you get another back injury, you forget that you ever had the old one. And then you're like, oh, and then, all of a sudden you'd be immobile, and that's not a very good business model as a family man to, hurt yourself or try to
It's
earn a living.
funny. It's funny how you remember those things. Like I've learned more things about like since I've lived out on the 3 acres because living in town, it's like mowing a small lawn or mowing a big lawn,
Hmm.
or going out and digging a post hole. Like I mean, before I could do that no problem. Now I go out there and I go dig a post hole and it's like I'm 3 or 4 into it and the dirt's really hard here too. So I may be a sissy, but the dirt is really hard. So digging 6 post holes, man, come in at the end of the day and I'm like, you got muscles that you didn't know hurting because you don't remember that. Or like working on a car, we had a lift, but now if I want to work on my car, I got to work on the ground, and it's like busting your knuckles or doing something. It's like you forget about that and how hard it was, but you're like thankful that you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that double-edged sword. And, but too, I think like for me, it just, you know, it kind of does motivate me. I'm 47, and, probably in the past year and a half, I've kind of devoted taking care of myself a little more seriously. Um,
Right.
so I do enjoy exercise and going to the gym, but I don't go super heavy. I'm not trying to get hurt. I'm just trying to live longer, you know, having a daughter
Yeah.
and whatnot. But yeah, so anyway, that's I think pretty much all I got in terms of questions. Was I kind of just wanted to get that journey and let the listeners know, because we talk about mental health and different things. Fortitude, I don't want to call it resilience, because I don't, although I'm sure you've bounced back from many things in life. This is not about bounce back. This is about kind of grit, fortitude, and continuing that journey. And kind of like you said, I think shaping your success, however that looks to you. Um,
Right.
Not about position, not about money, not about degrees, not about um, any of that, because it only holds the value that you assign to it, I think.
Right.
Um,
No, I agree 100%.
I think doing this, um, not only for whoever wants to listen, but also, like I always say, if nothing else, our children will have a place when we're gone to come and listen and or have morning coffee and listen to those
Yeah.
lessons um, when we're gone, because none of us are promised tomorrow. But you know, before we leave, let everybody know where they can find you.
So pretty much everywhere. So like it's at Wes Tankersley, at Wes.Tankersley, because there's some guy in Tennessee who has Wes Tankersley. Um, it's his name. What do you expect? But I got there late to the game. So it's at Wes.Tankersley. I do have, like, if you go to Instagram, I have a blue check mark. I paid for that because I think that it's important to people know who exactly you really are. TikTok's a little bit different, but at Wes.Tankersley, same thing there. You can follow us on One Drink Wednesday if you want to do that too. That's on both TikTok, Instagram. The YouTube is at Shaping Success uh, with Wes Tankersley. You can watch all that stuff. The podcast is anywhere you can be finding podcast. I have a link tree somewhere too, like that has all the links to everything. But yeah, I mean, the
Yeah, I
easiest
know on
way
the
is,
YouTube, if you scroll to the bottom, it has everything nicely laid out where they can find you.
yep. So, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's great to talk to you. If you ever have any questions about anything, just, you know,
Are you still
hit me
doing
up.
the music motivational stuff?
Yeah, so I do. We do motivational music hour. It's kind of a weird schedule because it's like every other week, but sometimes Nikki, my co-host, has like she does Toastmasters every other
Hmm.
Tuesday because she's trying to get out of her shell, and try and be a better speaker and get better in social situations. So I really applaud her for doing that. But it's kind of every other week with that. We actually are doing it next week. So it's been like 3 weeks in a row, which is not typical. But yeah, so we do that too. We listen to some music and talk about those. And that's on, I stream that from my TikTok channel. So, yep.
And that's kind of cool. That's one of the things I enjoy, as well as if I'm up early doing the dad thing, I can catch the podcast or, morning coffee. But then there's
Yep.
also the motivational days, the music. I like that you guys kind of tie what it means to you and the stories, and then of course you guys have the One Drink Wednesday, um, and I've seen that as well. I
That
enjoy it
one's
all,
just a
but
little more fun. That's like the virtual
yeah,
bar. Jay and I both enjoy bourbon, and we've known each other for a long time through podcasting. And yeah, that's just
yeah,
a
and
good
it's
time.
cool. It's cool. I think the listeners, the audience can go check all of that out, and they can kind of see um, the full circle, how everything's kind of connected within that, and all the guests and all the players, and even myself, I look forward more to getting in entertaining and learning more about it, of course. And it's only been a few months. It seems like it's been forever, but I've really only been on TikTok maybe 3 to 4 months, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it seems like things have happened rather rapidly. But yeah, it's people always see the finished product. They don't see all the hours of work that go into it and the backstory.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those things that goes along with that fortitude and drive. But yes, thank you for coming on. And that's, I'm just the platform to highlight people that are of interest to me, people that um, I respect, people that I look to, like-minded people, because, I tell everyone, hey, your time is your most valuable commodity. And so um, where I give my time is, if I'm giving my time to you, that's the most valuable thing I can give to you. And I understand that your time is valuable too, and so I appreciate you giving me your time, and the audience and the listeners, because I think there's a lot of value from the words you say, and I would encourage every listener to go out there, and if they can catch you in the morning, or if not, they can catch you on Spotify, YouTube, wherever.
Yep.
But thank you for giving me your time, and I look forward to picking your brain a little bit, and look forward to watching you grow and continuing to shape your success.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
All righty.